Welcome to Spooky History. Today we're turning over the death card and revealing the future with the history of tarot. You walk into the small room, the walls covered in hangings and decorations filled with mystic symbols and themes. In the centre of the room there is a small table, a velvet cloth draped over it. A figure sits on the far side, signalling you to a chair, their face hidden in the shadow of a voluminous hood. In their hands, a deck of strange, colourful cards. Reaching out, you place a silver coin in the hand of the hooded figure, softly asking your question. They nod, shuffling the cards slowly before laying them out in a cross, then a line. One by one, the cards are turned over, surreal images drawing the eye, connections made between visual elements, numbers, suits and names, the future, the past. Some deeper insight. Perhaps, perhaps not. Today we talk about the history of one of the most widespread and culturally known tools of the occult, tarot cards. Defining the history of tarot is no simple task. Because it first appeared in Europe in the early 1400s in the form of cards, the early evidence is often altered and fragmented. Political and religious forces forced tarot into a situation where it had to be camouflaged. Even now, there are organisations that see these humble or particularly fancy decks in a negative light. Over the last 3 centuries, the gradual easing of cultural pressures to maintain secrecy led to distortions in the tarot tradition and some wildly creative and revisionist innovations. Many versions of tarot's origins have been put forth. What follows is as factual as we can easily get. Then we can get into the more fanciful takes. So where did the word tarot come from? The term tarot comes from tarocchi, or tarosh-chi, a word in Italian whose root, tarosh, can be translated to mean foolishness. Tarosh was commonly used in the 15th century when Trionfi, a card game inspired by the theatrical festivals known as Trionfo, emerged. Trionfi cards typically featured gilded decorations and hand-painted illustrations of personified and allegorical motifs. In the 16th century, the Fool joined this series of archetypes, and the Trionfi game became known as Taroccio in Italy, and Tarot A, a term that eventually evolved into Tarotin in France. And then from Taroccio and Tarot A we get Tarot. Simple! The game of tarot has many regional variations. Tarocchini has survived in Bologna, and there are still others played in Piedmont and Sicily. But in Italy the game is generally less popular than elsewhere. The 18th century saw tarot's greatest revival, during which it became one of the most popular card games in Europe, played everywhere except Ireland and Britain, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Ottoman Balkans. French tarot experienced another revival beginning in the 1970s, and France has the strongest tarot gaming community. Regional tarot games, often known as Tarok, Tarok, and Tarok, which, although sound the same are actually spelled differently, are played in Central Europe within the borders of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire to this day. There is, however, one question this does not address. When did tarot start being used for divination? Descriptions at this point vary wildly, but ignoring the ancient Egypt theory, which we will come back to later, the most common narrative is as follows. According to a manuscript written by an unknown source in 1750, the 62-card Taroccio Bolognese from the 15th century was one of the earliest decks to be used more widely for fortune-telling. By the 1780s, people in France were assigning divine meanings to their decks as well, most commonly with the Tarot of Marseille, which at that point were one of the country's most popular playing cards. This movement was led by French occultist Jean-Baptiste Ayet, whose book, Way to Entertain Yourself with a Deck of Cards, unreliably linked the tarot to ancient Egyptian texts, specifically the magically imbued Book of Thoth. Told you we'd get back round to that. In 1789, Aliette would produce a new deck of tarot cards intended primarily for supernatural use. This deck comprises the 78 cards organised into 2 categories that we are most familiar with now, the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. The Major Arcana has 22 cards, each depicting an allegorical archetype. The Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant or Pope, the Hermit, the Hanged Man, the Lovers, the Devil and the Fool. Or the personification of an object, the Wheel of Fortune, the Chariot, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, and the World. Or a more abstract concept, strength, justice, judgment, temperance, and death. These cards are posited to hold the big secrets of spiritual self-awareness by occultists. The Minor Arcana features 4 suits: the suit of swords, the suit of batons or wands, the suit of coins or pentacles, and the suit of cups, of 14 cards each. Each suit in turn is made up of 10 numbered cards and 4 court cards: the king, queen, knight and jack, or knave, or even page. These cards are believed to hold the small secrets of everyday life. These concepts would remain relatively unchanged. By the turn of the 20th century, tarot cards, particularly the Tarot of Marseille, were so entwined with the occult that the Tarot Nouveau, a deck used solely for playing games rather than divination, was created to try and separate the two uses. The 3 most common decks used in esoteric tarot, such as for divination or introspective purposes, are the Tarot of Marseille, the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot deck, which many will see as the definitive deck, and the Thoth Tarot deck. Aleister Crowley, who created the Thoth deck along with Lady Frieda Harris, stated of the tarot, "The origin of this pack of cards is very obscure. Some authorities seek to put it back as far as the ancient Egyptian mysteries, others try to bring it forward as late as the 15th or even the 16th century, but the only theory of ultimate interest about the tarot is that it is an admirable symbolic picture of the universe, based on the data of the Holy Kabbalah. Make of that what you will." So there we have the relatively rational history of the tarot, calmly sidestepping questions of damnation and whether or not it works. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Spooky History. Hit the bell icon and subscribe to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching, and please, do have nightmares. Tarot, 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 LMNO tarot. Welcome to Spooky History. Today we're turning over the death card and revealing the future. Taroshini has survived in Bologna and Bologna? Bologna. How do you say that? Bologna, 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 Bologna. Go back in Bologna.